Yeah.
Well, don't say I didn't warn you. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. Guys, college football, of course, has done it again. Week 7, like we said earlier, was the best and most exciting week of college football we have had this season. We had 8 teams in the top 25 fall, and we had major games that would shape the top 10 and shape the college football playoff race. So as always, we are here to break down everything that happened in Week 7, share how we did on our predictions, and briefly preview our teams trending up and trending down going into what should be another great week in Week 8. But we'll start with the 8 teams in the top 25 that went down. We knew 4 of those were going to come from ranked versus ranked matchups. So while they are ranked teams that fell, it's understandable. But we did have 4 teams that fell to unranked teams. That, of course, was number 23, Memphis, falling to Temple. Wake Forest at home, allowing 62 points to Louisville, falling 62 to 59. Miami defeating number 20, Virginia, on Friday night. And then, of course, potentially the upset of the year, number 3, Georgia, falling at home to Will Muschamp and South Carolina 20-17 in double overtime. And we will, of course, break down that game here in a second. Arguably, maybe the best game of Week 7, but certainly the most shocking game of Week 7 and maybe even the entire college football season. But briefly, we're going to look at how we did on our predictions before we jump into the slate of games, kind of recapping that and recapping who's going up. Of course, Louisville and South Carolina both on our trending up board. Overall, this week, we went 24-7 against the straight up, 77.4%. And of course, as you all know, we want to hit 76%. And right now, through week 7, through 7 weeks, we're sitting at 80.3% straight up, 233 and 57. This is by far the best start we have ever had at the Gridiron Expert through 7 weeks. So we're hoping to keep up that success as we continue to move on through the rest of this season. But 80.3% through 7 weeks, we will certainly take it. What we will not take is a 40% record against the spread. 4-6 this week, obviously a very, very disappointing week. Something that we obviously can't control. We picked what we thought were the best games, and they didn't come through for us. But are we happy about it? Absolutely not. But will we bounce back? You can bet your money that we will bounce back. So I can assure you, for those that have paid, those that will pay, that this is not going to be a trend that sticks around for a while. But as you can see, despite that poor record in Week 7, everybody has bad weeks. You just got to bounce back. It's the way the game is played, the way it works. It happens. You just see how we respond to it. But overall, we're 41-30-1, which is 58.3%, well above 500, still better than many of the analysts out there at some of the major sites. And that's obviously what we're trying to do. We want to stay around 58 to 60% or better than that. So at least 58% or better has kind of been our benchmark goal. Well above 500, you're going to be making money if you do that. So obviously not our best week against the spread, but Week 8 will be a major bounce back week, and you can bet your money on that one. So now jumping into the in-game action, the ones that really, really matter. And we'll start with Friday night with one of those top 25 upsets that we mentioned, as Miami took down number 20 Virginia 17-9. And a lot of people were curious for this game because going into the game, Miami was favored. They were favored 60% to 40% by the FPI. And this was a Miami team that the week before found themselves down 28-0 and then lost 42-35 to an abysmal Virginia Tech offense. But Manny Diaz made a quarterback change. He put in N'Kosi Perry in this game against Virginia, and it paid off. The defense paid off, stepped up, and held that Virginia offense to just 9 points, contained Bryce Perkins. Absolutely thrilling game, low-scoring game, so if you love defense, this was the game for you. But Miami created chaos in the ACC Coastal Division, and that's what we expected. We expected there to be a very tight race in that division, but this win over the Cavaliers now has Virginia, Duke, Pittsburgh, North Carolina, maybe even Miami in the hunt for this Coastal Division as we continue to work our way towards the end of the season. So keep an eye on the ACC Coastal to see who will have the honor of getting annihilated by Clemson in the ACC title game. So now we have to talk about what I said earlier, potentially the upset of the year. Unless something else happens in the final 4 or 5 weeks of the season, in my opinion, this will be, because nobody in their right mind thought that South Carolina was going to go into Athens and defeat the Bulldogs. Maybe you thought they were going to keep it close. They were 25-point underdogs. So maybe you thought they were going to keep it close or give them a fight. But South Carolina went in to Athens. Number 3 Georgia beat them 20-17 in 2 overtimes. They lost their quarterback, Ryan Helensky, in the 3rd quarter. So even then, you thought, okay, they've hung with us this long, they've lost their quarterback. Now Georgia's going to put on the gas, put their foot on the pedal, and run away with this game. And that's not what happened. What happened is South Carolina's defense stepped up. South Carolina's defense was the absolute key in this game, forcing 4 turnovers, picking off Jake Fromm, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, one of the more accurate and reliable quarterbacks in the entire nation. They picked him off 3 times, one of those going for a crucial pick 6, and also forced a fumble from Fromm. And then, to make this game even wilder, you go to overtime, tied at 17. South Carolina misses the game-winning field goal in the first overtime. They got a chance to do it because they threw yet another interception, Georgia did, in the first overtime. South Carolina misses the game-winning field goal. They go to second overtime. This time they hit it. And then Rodrigo Blankenship, arguably one of the most reliable kickers in the entire nation, walks out for like a 40-yard field goal and misses it. He misses it wide left. Talk about destiny, talk about fate, talk about the football gods watching over the Gamecocks in this one. South Carolina goes on the road, takes down number 3 Georgia, which will create chaos in the SEC East now as we have a major showdown between Georgia and Florida on November 2nd. That game we knew back in the preseason would decide the East. That game even having bigger stakes now that Georgia and Florida both already have 1 loss. The loser of that, playoff hopes are done. But for you Bulldog fans that think your playoff hopes are done, they are absolutely not. They are absolutely not. We have seen teams lose early before. We have seen teams lose to teams they should not lose to before, and they end up bouncing back and still making the top 4. It is possible. We've seen it happen over and over again in college football. That's why the sport is so great. Bulldog fans, hang in there, but South Carolina fans, rejoice. What a win for you guys. And then we had the Red River rivalry between Oklahoma and Texas, and that was one that was one of our game of the weeks. Number 6, Oklahoma. Number 11, Texas. Oklahoma getting their revenge from the regular season loss they had last year, beating Texas 34-27 in this one. Texas guys simply woke up too late in this game. That was their issue. They scored 24 second half points, but only 3 first half points. And I will say this game probably should have been worse than the final score indicated, because Oklahoma had multiple chances in the red zone early to score and run away with this game. Jalen Hurts fumbled. Jalen Hurts threw an interception. So Texas's defense stepped up big in this game against the Sooners. But it wasn't enough because Texas simply couldn't do anything right. They couldn't catch. You know, Sam Ehlinger, great quarterback, but you can't move the ball if your receivers can't catch. They couldn't block. Oklahoma sacked Texas 9 times in this game. Texas couldn't tackle. Good Lord, CeeDee Lamb was running through these guys like it was a Pee-wee football team out there. Lamb having 10 receptions for 171 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Texas just simply couldn't do anything right. Got started too late. Ended up falling to their rivals. That's their second loss, both to quality opponents in LSU and Oklahoma, but more than likely ruins the Longhorns' college football playoff hopes. While the Sooners, now sitting at undefeated, probably getting their toughest test out of the way until the Big 12 championship game, could run the table and make themselves a lock for the college football playoff. Wisconsin defeated Michigan State, another one of our top 5 games going into this week. We thought this could be a defensive battle. We thought this could be a game that was low scoring and tough because Wisconsin has one of the best defenses in the nation, and the same can be said for Michigan State. And while the Spartans did hold Jonathan Taylor to under 100 rushing yards, they did allow him to score 2 touchdowns, and they did allow Wisconsin's offense to roll. Wisconsin defeated Michigan State 38-0 for their 4th shutout this season. 4 shutouts this season, and we're not even 8 games in for the Badgers. That is unbelievable. Wisconsin is absolutely in my top 4. Wisconsin, in my opinion, is playing like our top 4 team in the country solely because of their defense, but they have once again shown they do have the power on offense now to hang with some of the big boys. Now, I know they haven't played Ohio State yet. I know they maybe haven't played some of the elite opponents that you guys want to see outside of Michigan, but Wisconsin's a top 4 team. Watch out for the Badgers in the Big Ten this season, and watch out for them on crashing the college football playoff. Notre Dame survived USC 30-27 in a game that was much closer than I think many thought it would be. Notre Dame had chances to, inability to score within the 20-yard line, holding them to field goals that could have put this game farther out of reach. I was impressed with USC's passing attack. Did a pretty good job with Keaton Slovis going up against this Notre Dame secondary. But once again, Notre Dame found themselves a rushing game. You've watched that game. They had some pretty good success on the ground in the short yardage plays. And that's what was really impressive to me. Notre Dame keeps their college football playoff hopes alive by beating a quality opponent and their rival, USC, even though they should have won by more than 3 points. And then we have our final 2 games here, our final 2 that we had up on our big board from our Week 7 prediction. Penn State once again survives Kinnick Stadium. Once again survives Kinnick Stadium. They survived it in a thriller 2 years ago and did it again this year. Now, many thought Penn State could run away with this game, just based on the fact of how well their offense has been playing, how well their defense has been playing, especially against with the pass rush, and how poorly Iowa played against Michigan just back in Week 6. But we said, at night, at Kinnick Stadium, you never ever count out the Hawkeyes. And we didn't. Even though they did not get the win, they only lost by 5 points. Could have lost by 3 had they been able to. For those of you that picked Iowa, we did not. I know that 2-point conversion was very, very crucial. But in the end, we said some of the keys were going to be forcing turnovers. Iowa had 2. Iowa had 2 crucial turnovers in this game. A major tipping point as to why Penn State walked out of there with a huge nighttime win. So Penn State looking everything as a college football playoff contender. Can they continue the success next week when they face off against Michigan, of course, further down the road with that game against Ohio State? And then, of course, the biggest game of Week 7, LSU, Florida. Number 7, Florida, traveling to Death Valley at night to take on number 5, LSU. That was a game that, just like this entire week of college football, lived up to the hype. Now, LSU did win that game 42-28, won by 14 points. Killed me, because we had Florida at plus 13.5, so a half point. But, man, I tell you what, Vegas knows what they're doing. But the Gators actually led this game 28-21 entering the third quarter, early third quarter, I should say. Scored, took the lead. Then they did what they did best. Joe Burrow and LSU did what they did best, opening up that passing attack, scoring 21 unanswered points. Even though Florida only trailed 35-28 entering the fourth quarter, even though they only trailed by 7 for the majority of the fourth quarter, Joe Burrow opened it up with a 54-yard touchdown pass to Jamar Chase with just about 7 minutes left or so, ruining any chances of Florida's comeback, even though they did have a chance to score a garbage time touchdown late in that fourth quarter. But Joe Burrow, once again, against one of the more elite secondaries and elite defenses in the SEC, and maybe even the nation, went 21 for 24, 293 yards, and 3 touchdowns. On the other side, Kyle Trask had one of the best games of his career. So what you have to take away from this game is LSU is legit. 100%. Top 4 team in the country, college football playoff contender. Yeah, they're the real deal. But Florida is too. For the people that said Florida was overrated and didn't stand a chance against LSU, that were going to go in there and get annihilated, that is entirely false. Because they hung with LSU for the entirety of this game. Kyle Trask, 23 for 29, 310 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But he had 1 interception. And that 1 interception was extremely costly, throwing it in the end zone with a chance to tie with 7 minutes and 26 seconds left. That was the interception that led to Burrow's touchdown pass to Jamar Chase that ended the Gators' chance of a comeback. He doesn't throw that interception and Florida scores. Who knows what could have happened for the remainder of that game. But Florida's legit. LSU's legit. It was an absolute thriller in Death Valley, but the Tigers and Ed Ogeron come away with the victory. Once again, setting up a major showdown against Alabama in a few weeks. The same can be said for Florida going up against Georgia in a few weeks, a game that will decide the SEC East. And for LSU and Alabama, a game that will decide the SEC West. So now I want to take a look at our teams trending up and trending down, one of our favorite segments that we do at the conclusion of every week. And as you know, we try to include teams that aren't ranked in the top 25. And if they are, they're not ranked very high. You know, we could always put Alabama trending up. We could always put LSU trending up. But they're already in the top 5. They're some of the best of the best. We're trying to give some credit to those teams that maybe aren't getting it as much. And we're going to start with Louisville. We're going to start with the Cardinals. And like I said, as many of you know, we own up to our losses and mistakes here. And Louisville was one of them. I didn't expect much out of Scott Satterfield and this Cardinals squad in 2019. After the abysmal performance I saw out of the Cardinals last year, horrible on offense, lack of effort, 2-win season, the mess that Bobby Petrino left them, I didn't think Scott Satterfield would be able to turn it around in one season. Well, he has proven me wrong. Louisville has won 2 straight games, 41-39 over Boston College, and just last week, just yesterday, 62-59 on the road at number 19 Wake Forest. Unbelievable. Unbelievable how well this Louisville offense is playing, even though they have plenty of concerns on the defensive side of the ball, allowing Wake Forest to put up over 600 yards of offense and, of course, 59 points. They still came away with the win. They have Clemson next week, probably going to be a loss there, but Louisville's sitting at 4-2 and have a very, very solid chance of getting to a bowl game in Scott Satterfield's first season. We got Missouri coming in at number 2 here on our teams trending up. They've lost that season opener to Wyoming, an inexcusable loss for a team that had such high expectations entering 2019. But since that Wyoming loss, Missouri has won 5 straight games. They're 5-1. They beat South Carolina by 20, team that just beat Georgia. They annihilated Ole Miss this past week. And they annihilated West Virginia, who, isn't playing extremely well, but has shown major signs of improvement since week 1 under Neil Brown. Their next 2 games are on the road against Vanderbilt, who just got annihilated at home by UNLV, and then on the road against Kentucky, who's still having some quarterback issues. Missouri should be 7-1 going into their game against Georgia on November 9th. A game that will have major, like Georgia and Florida, major SEC East title implications, of course, depending on how that Georgia and Florida game fares the week before. So Missouri, watch out for them. Despite that loss to Wyoming, still SEC title contenders, led by Kelly Bryant, and a big, big year from Barry Odom. And then finally, staying in the SEC East, you have to throw South Carolina up there. When you beat the number 3 team in the country on the road, you're going to be on the trending up board. And that's what we've got with the Gamecocks. A team that's 3-3 right now, but should probably be 4-2. Shouldn't have lost to North Carolina all the way back in week 1. But they beat Kentucky 24-7. They beat Georgia on the road, as we mentioned. And with the nation's toughest schedule, wins like that go a long, long way. Not only a long way in just the direction of your program and pulling off one of the best upsets in all of college football, but a long way in trying to get yourself to a bowl game. South Carolina sitting at 3-3 right now, as we mentioned. Their next 4 games, Florida at home, at Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Appalachian State. I would say 3 of those 4 are winnable, but the Florida game at home is extremely winnable as well, as South Carolina nearly beat them last season. So don't count out the Gamecocks that, despite the extremely difficult schedule, despite the very disappointing start, could still go bowling under Will Muschamp thanks to this huge, huge upset over Georgia. Over here trending down, we stick in the SEC. A lot of SEC this week. Mississippi State out of the SEC West. I think that Bulldog Nation and everybody in Stark Vegas has lost their patience with Joe Moorhead. They had a lot of talent last season, and I don't think he lived up to expectations. I don't think he utilized it in the best way, and Mississippi State did not do as well as many thought they would. Now, they just lost 20-10 at Tennessee. 1-4 Tennessee. they just lost to the Volunteers by 10 points. They have quarterback questions left and right for the Bulldogs, something they just can't seem to figure out. They've lost 3 of their past 4 to Kansas State, Auburn, and Tennessee, and 3 of their next 4 are against LSU, Texas A&M, and Alabama. Things aren't getting any easier for Mississippi State. Joe Moorhead obviously needs to do something to turn this team around and win some of these next 4 games against some of the tougher opponents and on their schedule, because if not, he might be out of Starkville sooner rather than later. I hate having Washington State up on my teams trending down. I'm a huge fan of Mike Leach. I'm a huge fan of his philosophy. I'm a huge fan of his team, just watching them play. But the Cougars have to be up here. If they hadn't lost UCLA a few weeks ago, blowing that 32-point lead, I don't think they'd be up here, and I don't think they'd be 3-3 having lost their past 3 games. But that loss to an undermanned UCLA team was demoralizing for the Cougars. They lost 3 straight, as we mentioned, UCLA, then 38-13 to Utah, and just yesterday, 38-34 to Arizona State. A thrilling shootout, just couldn't get the job done. Anthony Gordon's putting up huge numbers once again, as we would expect out of a Mike Leach quarterback, as we would expect out of a Mike Leach offense. But Washington State simply not getting it done. And you thought they could be Pac-12 title contenders like they were last year, and unfortunately for them, that's just not the case. Mike Leach and his squad need to go bowling this year after a very disappointing start to the season. And then finally, a team that might not even go bowling in 2019 is BYU. Everybody was singing their praises back 3 weeks into the season. The Cougars were 2-1. They had beat Tennessee in a thriller. They had beat USC in a thriller. And now they've lost 3 straight games to be 2-4, losing to Washington, understandable, but not understandable is losing to Toledo, who just lost to Bowling Green, and South Florida, whose best wins this season and only wins this season prior to beating BYU were UConn and South Carolina State. Inexcusable for the Cougars sitting at 2-4 right now. They did have to start Jaron Hall at quarterback, obviously the first black quarterback to ever start a game for BYU, and he did not play bad. He did pretty good in replacement of Zach Wilson, just not enough to get them a win. And with their next 2 games against Boise State and Utah State, both potential losses for BYU, the Cougars would need to win out in the remaining 4 games just to reach bowl eligibility. A very tall task for Kalani Sitake, a guy that I had on my hot seat coming into this season, and his seat is slowly but surely warming up after a promising start that has now turned sour 7 weeks into the season. So there you have it, guys, your Week 7 recap. We mentioned it was the best and most exciting week of college football yet, and we will stick by that until the next best and most exciting week comes around. And if you look ahead, I'm thinking that's going to be Week 9. But we don't want to jump ahead too far. We've got to focus on Week 8. We've got a lot of content coming your way. We had 18th in the top 25 Blues, so you know there's going to be major top 25 shakeups. That analysis coming out on Monday. Week 8 predictions coming out on Tuesday. And then, of course, Game of the Week predictions coming at you every single day, the remainder of this week leading up into Week 8 on Saturday. So guys, thank you for watching. Make sure you go follow us on Twitter at Gridiron Expert. Check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Sign up for the expert picks. Everything's in the description below. And once again, thank you for watching us. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.